On that note, right, I mean, one of the stories that keeps coming back, and recently I heard that, you know, even the Queen had shares in this company or something like that, is the Poseidon story. You lived through that time.
Yeah,
Can you give us some stories to...
Well, I was on the Daily News when Mount Windara was found, and Ken Shirley was the discoverer, and Norm Shearer was the head of Poseidon, the company. It was quite a good discovery, but it became inflated to the point that I remember on the Daily News we ran a story about all the companies that had tenements within about 30 kilometres of it. They all rose about threefold and as a result of that, which was nonsense.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, that mine had ground problems. And people never talked much about that. But I worked on a gold mine for a while just for experience, and some of the guys I worked with went up to Windara and they came back and they said the ground, they didn't like it because it wasn't as sound as the Golden Mile, which is saying something. And so the boom went mad to the point that companies would announce that they've just pegged ground near Kambalda, and their price would double, and you'd go and look at the records and you'd find that they've pegged something that's just barely north of Norseman, so probably 80 kilometres away. Yeah. So and that was, so the Ray report came out and it really did a good job on sorting all those things out, and years later of course we got a proper JORC code to stop the problems that happened with interpretation of ore bodies. But Norm Shearer stuck by that company for quite a while. It was eventually taken over by Western Mining because it basically was failing, and it was failing by recovery problems, ground problems and a few other issues. And the nickel boom had disappeared, and the nickel price was at a very sober price at the time. But Western Mining was very happy to shut that mine down years later, and I understood there was a party where they had champagne to talk about that. Oh, right. But it's been resurrected a few times, but it's still not redeveloped, and I think they'd have to look at the ground conditions to be one of the issues. But what happened was that thing took the nickel price and the nickel boom up here. It came down and created a massive headache. You may recall around that time when it crashed, you'd find exploration geologists driving taxis. It was a very sobering time, and of course the gold price was only fair, but they had already cut the government subsidy out of gold because they thought nickel was going to save us. So it was a very tough time for everybody, and I was glad when Homestake turned up in Kalgoorlie and supported Western Mining in keeping things going and starting the Cassidy shaft.
Yes.
That was the new life for gold.